Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is episode 241, and I'm glad you're back. We've got a great conversation with Frater O this week. We will also have a famous Freemason and some other things, possibly. So stay tuned for a great episode. Before we get started, I just need to mention our show sponsor, Brothers Blend Coffee. So if you like coffee and you're a Freemason and you like to support lodges and charities, go to brothersblendcoffee.com, pick up one of 3 great varieties of coffee. They're about $12 each, couple dollars for shipping and handling. They handle PayPal right there on their website. It is a local coffee roasted right there in their vicinity, Montgomery Lodge in Milford, Massachusetts. And of course, their charity helps support the charitable causes, activities, and maintenance of that lodge. Please check it out when you get a chance. brothersblendcoffee.com. So we'll get right into that interview right now. Okay, everybody, we're back this week, episode 241, and we have Frater O on this week. We had a really good conversation 2 weeks ago. We got a lot of great comments, people thanking us for some of the suggestions and how to work things with diet and meditation and things of that nature. We put a post up on Facebook that said, looking toward the future, what would you like the show to cover more of? Practical Masonic subjects, which ones esoteric subjects outside the realm of regular quote-unquote Masonic topics? Give some suggestions. We got a veritable buffet of answers. Richard Zarth said he loves the esoteric subjects. He does prefer they relate back to Masonry, but they don't always have to. The more he studies Eastern philosophy, the more he sees it woven into Masonry. Maybe some more enlightenment in that area. Eric Tamez said he'd like to learn more about Martinism and how it relates to Masonry. Esoterica is where it's at for him. Aubrey Bird says he appreciates when we relate the esoteric ideas to popular culture. That way, the uninitiated, such as himself, has a better way of understanding the practical values and lessons. Jim Stapleton said, I like the practical Masonic topics, maybe more about mentoring, the initiatic experience, etc. Austin Kenny, I'd love to hear more about the O.T.A, the Golden Dawn, and Crowley and how they all relate to the craft. Probably touch a little bit on that this episode. Chris says, anything you and Frater O discuss draws me in, and he can't stop listening and taking notes. He's only 5 years into his Masonic career, and he learned so much. Well, we learned too, Chris. Every week we're talking and learning about these subjects as we talk, and we kind of dissect them as we're talking about them. We're learning quite a bit ourselves just from the discussion. Dennis says O.T.A would be pretty cool to hear about. Aleister Crowley was a crazy dude. He was a pretty crazy dude. Mike Hambrecht, after listening to WCY episodes 14, 18, and 21, how about discussion regarding the quest of the Holy Grail as it relates to Masonry? Perhaps how the quest might relate to Freemason's own quest for light. Mike, the Holy Grail is an amazing topic and is supremely internal. It's a huge symbolic story. The more that we've got several episodes of WCY that deal with the Grail Hollows, and there is a specific author who writes for the Knight Templar magazine quite frequently, P.D. Newman, who is fantastic. So anytime you see P.D. Newman, read his stuff. In fact, I think he's got his stuff up online on some of the websites where you can host scholarly papers. He'll host, and you can follow his public papers that he'll publish. Terry says, differences of the Southern and Northern Scottish Rite Freemasonry. There's not much to tell, Terry. It is 64 different degrees, but we can definitely talk about that at some point. Honorable Prentice Luster, he says, the Holy Temple of Saints John. And Mike Hambrecht said he likes John Ruark's idea, which was, going back to the top, John says, tarot? With a question mark. Tarot is near and dear to my heart, not because I'm super practical or practicing of the tarot. I just find it an amazing topic. I love how Milton Pottinger relates to it. And I love the history of playing cards, which is the 52 tarot deck. So any thoughts on any of these, Frater?
Let's just kind of pick away at them, and let's start at the top with tarot. There's out here in Massachusetts, and at Cambridge Lodge, there's an order that meets called B.O.T.A, the Builders of Atronatum. Is that correct? Am I saying it right?
It's the builders of the Aditum or Aditum.
Thank you. I know I was going to butcher that.
I'm a member.
You are?
I am.
Well, okay. Well, then I'll let you take it from over here.
No, because I just joined, so I have nothing about it.
That's what they tell you to say.
No. So I actually, at the recommendation of somebody who said, if you're really into a lot of the Kabbalistic teachings and spirituality, and you want to learn more about the tarot, there's a great organization out there. It's called B.O.T.A, and this came from a really knowledgeable brother who I totally respect. And he said he's been doing it for several years, and it's not cheap. It's about $18 a month. I think a year is like $216. So it's definitely more than your Blue Lodge dues, but you're required to do some work. So there's definitely work and study packets that come home monthly that are due and are real assignments. So there is a giant push on the tarot in there, just understanding it, Hebrew characters, and it's pretty interesting stuff.
Also to note that Paul Foster Case was a Mason as well.
Yeah, true.
If you're looking to get involved with a group that's usually like-minded, and it's also co-ed, that are interested in esoteric ideas, this is a great place to go to.
Yeah, B.O.T.A offers like its correspondence course, so think of the Master Craftsman program, guys, but think of it as not based on the history of the Scottish Rite or the degrees. The things that are in B.O.T.A are going to deal with, they consider themselves an original descendant of actual mystery schools. They don't have degrees or rites of initiation per se, because it's all correspondence based. And in this day and age of modern thinking, the idea of secret teachings are open teachings, because B.O.T.A believes that they were secret in the past because it was dangerous to think about these things, right? These are things you could mention and they would get you killed, but that is not true today for the most part. So B.O.T.A actually offers these for free in their study courses. Like I said, it's $18 a month is the dues. If you and your wife both want to do it, they offer kind of a cool thing. So instead of paying $18 and $18, you only pay $21 for 2 people in the household to do it. My wife and I don't do it together. I'm the only one who is involved in B.O.T.A, but I haven't gotten my first study packet yet. But I might by the time this airs, so we'll see. But I'm pretty excited about starting it and checking out what it has to offer.
You know, I never owned a tarot deck before until you sent me one, and that kind of dabbled my interest.
Yeah.
I found it right after you sent it to me. I was like, man, how do I even learn? I just Googled Manly P. Hall and tarot, and the first thing that came up was a 2.5-hour long video on how Manly P. Hall gets extensively into it and breaks it down, the archetypes. And then, going back to Pottinger's work with the symbology. But interesting to note that Manly P. Hall with Augustus Knapp, they actually did a tarot card deck, which was really, really cool. It's very rare, hard to find, and then when they're for sale, they go for hundreds of dollars. Really, really fascinating.
Yeah, so those tarot decks are incredibly fascinating because they were done by brothers who were pretty well known. There are a couple stores out in England that sell reproduction tarot decks. I think the one I sent you was Rider and Waite, A.E. Waite. That's a pretty common deck, but A.E. Waite is another Mason who created a tarot deck. The tarot deck it deals heavily with archetypes. So if you're new to tarot and you just think like, oh, fortune teller. So B.O.T.A doesn't actually teach, fortune telling with tarot. B.O.T.A teaches the symbology of the tarot deck and how to recognize and utilize those symbols to make you better. So similar to Masonry in the fact that instead of a square and compasses, you might have something like the Magician or any number of the tarot deck cards. And something that Frater O had mentioned was archetypes. So that is something that's actually hard for a lot of people to grasp. The idea of archetypes and the idea of, they sit here and I don't know how to really relate this without just saying like, people will say, oh, like Hiram Abiff and Thoth and, all these certain characters. They're the same guy. Well, that's archetypes. When you hear like Hermes Trismegistus, well, that's Thoth. And that's also, it can span several iterations of itself. So that's archetypes. So you'll see archetypes on these tarot decks like the Fool, the Magician, the Lovers, the Sun, Death, all kinds of different imagery. But definitely cool, definitely interesting, definitely fun. Will help in your understanding of symbology. I mean, we're looking at symbols as something that has been around for before, language. Symbols were what it was. You can look up old books, let's say on Amazon, and you can look up emblem books. Emblem books were books that had depictions and drawings in there that told stories and depicted ideas that you could open the book and you could just verbally communicate to somebody what's going on. And that was better than reading in the day, right? Because you could teach so much with this picture that you couldn't teach with just a simple construct of sentences and paragraphs.
Well, the interesting thing, too, with archetypes is when you get into Carl Jung and psychology and those aspects, Carl Jung used archetypes on the inner aspect, not using the tarot. And getting into the mind and the body together can play different kind of roles, and usually it falls into this number 12 category. And you can play the victim or the fool or the magician, or
right.
And so it's really fascinating that tarot deck and them can be applied and copied and pasted to the psychology of a human being.
Yeah, so you'll find that at different points in your life, you're exemplifying these archetypes, these characters, personality types. So it's almost like people always say that the mysticism, the magic, is not actually magic, and everything has an explanation, and that every aspect of the unexplained is just misunderstood science. And in a way, the tarot is a mystical way of understanding the science of personalities, the mystical science of traits, characteristics, behaviors, and it even goes so far as to go into thinking, how people think at certain points in their life, attributes, and whether you're selfish or giving or you're scared of death, or it's really quite interesting.
Also, too, if you're into like the deviation aspect and learning about like these oracle cards, tarot is one aspect of it. However, if you're more into the Eastern philosophical school of thought, the I Ching is another practicality or a system that you can kind of use that allows you to read the current present condition pretty much of your unconscious mind, so what character you're playing from. So another little school of thought there if you're into Eastern ideas.
One of the interesting parts of Milton A. Pottinger's book, I would say about a third of the book toward the back, is pretty much all about what he calls the 52 card tarot, or his original tarot, which is kind of interesting. I may be incorrect here, but Blavatsky was one of the first people to kind of mass produce a tarot deck. I can't remember. However, Pottinger's 52 card tarot is literally the deck of cards that you guys have sitting in your junk drawers or wherever. I myself collect decks of cards, so I've got probably 40 or 50 decks of cards, some of which are themed. And what's interesting is no matter what the theme of the cards, guys, the symbols never change. And I'm not just talking about clubs, spades, hearts, and diamonds. We're talking about the direction that the characters are looking. Kings, queens, and jacks. We're talking about what they're holding. What are they holding? The designs on each card. What you would consider just, the king always has this weird kind of ball shape there that's got almost a T and some like 3 leaves on it. Well, what is that, and why is it always there? It's there because there is a reason. It's a 3-dimensional ball shape, actually. But there are these rules, actually. So, you'll notice certain things like king, the queen, and the jack are never looking at the spade because the spade represents death. They're always looking at the diamond because it's wealth. They're always looking at the heart. So there's all these really interesting concepts that I would urge you, there's going to be some of you right now, I'm sure, who are pulling out a deck of cards going, are these guys for real? We're totally for real. So if you haven't read Pottinger's Symbolism, a treatise on the soul of things, I want to say archive.org has it.
I have a link to it. I'll give it to you, and we can throw it in the show notes.
All right. One of the interesting things is Frater O and I doing some research at the House of the Temple a few years ago. We actually got to hold a physical copy of the book, and in the back, almost perfectly preserved, is it's like a map of a human body and the constellations and the cards all lined up. You don't actually get that in a PDF copy of the book. It's one of those things that's just not there. So if you ever get a chance, you're at the House of the Temple or anywhere else that you can find a really cool Masonic set of books, if you see a treatise on the soul of things, carefully pull it out, carefully go to the back and see if there's the insert in there, and pull it out and check it out. You'll be pretty amazed. One of the other topics somebody brought up,
just to digress back for a second. So on The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, he gets into, in particular, on one chapter, he breaks down extensively the whole tarot deck in relations to the history of weights and Rosicrucians and archetypes, and he also gets into Paul Foster Case, and then he also compares it to like the 52 cards in the deck that RJ just mentioned, as well as he gets into the ideas of each state pertaining to one. He gets pretty deep, really, really deep than most people, as well as he gets into a bunch of French philosophers too. And I would highly recommend checking that out. We can put a link in the show notes to that too.
Yeah, definitely. We'll build up a really nice section of links that you guys can probably spend hours on. Martinism from Eric Tamez. Martinism is interesting, brother. So Martinism is several different sects of Martinism exist. If you are Freemason, there are Martinist Masonic Orders. One of the most popular is one of these, invite-only kind of orders. I believe 27 members or 77 members or something odd like that. The Martinist Orders are inherently Christian. There's a heavy influence there of the Christian Masonry. From what I understand, the Martinist Orders in the United States, I'm sorry to report, are mostly dinner clubs, exclusive dinner clubs where not a whole lot of extra cool things are happening, not a lot of degrees, not a lot of that kind of whatnot going on. And to the dismay, actually, of the rest of the world, places like the United Kingdom and other places that have these Martinist orders are actually, they're not exactly pleased with the direction of the United States Martinist orders. But that said, I don't want to speak too much about them because I actually am not a member of any Martinist order, so I don't know everything there is to know, and I probably, we can let Frater O hop in here for a minute and maybe shed a little bit of light, and if he has none, then we'll have to revisit it on another episode.
And I do know a little bit. I'm not a member. Again, these are like usually pretty hidden, hermetically sealed orders. One in particular, I know that if you have to like join like York and Scottish, sit in certain chairs, and then the doors open to you. But one in particular is the Hermetic Order of Martinists, HOM, and the whole order was originally founded by Louis Claude de Saint Martin. I suppose it was a poor French candidate, or poor Frenchman. He was imprisoned during the French Revolution because local authorities needed desperate school teachers, and he wasn't too happy to become one. But anyways, he kind of finds himself into like the works of Jacob Boehm, or into like more tectonic philosophical ideas from dramatic history, and then he kind of creates his own ideas, and he kind of becomes his own philosopher. And now, if I butchered that to anyone who's a member, my apologies. I know I've read loosely on it. I know a lot of Rosicrucian groups kind of go hand in hand with Martinism.
Yeah, I have heard this also. I'm not a member of any Rosicrucian groups, which is probably a good segue into Rosicrucianism. Rosicrucianism is really interesting, going back to Christian Rosenkreutz, who is a character they base the teachings off of. Most of the research, hardcore historical research that I've done, has shown that Christian Rosenkreutz never existed. But that doesn't mean the order doesn't exist. There are plenty of Rosicrucian orders out there. There is the Christian...
What is it? So the Christian Rosicrucian group? Is that what you're thinking of?
There's a Rosicrucian, the Christian Rosicrucian Fellowship. They're an online organization. They teach vegetarianism. They believe that Christ was a man, but a great philosophical teacher.
Yeah, they're down in Oceanside.
Yeah, it's a pretty rad organization. However, again, I couldn't totally speculate on too much of it, that anytime we're talking about Rosicrucianism, it necessarily goes into alchemy and spiritual alchemy. I'm
going to interrupt you here. It's the Rosicrucian Fellowship.
The Rosicrucian Fellowship, that's it. Yeah.
And so there's weird orders too that, like, for example, I know if you join a Rosicrucian order called SCRA or SCRIF here in the States, once you become a certain grade, then you can get into a Martinist order. But it's interesting that there's so many Rosicrucian orders nowadays that are inside of Masonry and also outside of Masonry that are claiming legitimate lineages, and it's just these massive pissing matches between
that's for sure. AMORC, AMORC, is probably the largest and most well-known, and they have probably more money than any of the other groups, and they probably actually do more work, as in, spiritual work, than anybody else. But they're also the one who seems to make it a business. It's really interesting. Frater O tells me that they have an incredible museum.
Yeah, they have a really cool museum up in San Francisco if you're ever up there. They also have a roller coaster that kind of pertains to astral traveling, which is very, very amazing.
We need that. That is the most amazing thing I've ever heard, actually. We need to start a Kickstarter. Send Frater O and RJ to the AMORC roller coaster. Do we do that?
Yeah, that might piss off a few Rosicrucian Masons. It's interesting. If you become a Rosicrucian Mason, depending on what side of Scottish or York, there's two different kinds. If you're an AMORC member before you've joined Masonry, where you've joined, you cannot join this Rosicrucian order, which is really funny. Really, just like they're just, again, it just shows the battling between the orders and whose lineage is correct.
Yeah, it is, like you said, total wildness goes on, and there's all kinds of recognition things, and some of these orders try to legitimize, and they do it the only way they know how, right? I mean, most Freemasons come into Masonry, and a lot of us are looking for this higher, spiritual orders and things, and we don't necessarily find it in Blue Lodge, which leads to frustrations. And then we kind of look outside the lodge, right? Because we start hearing these terms, and then we can start searching these terms, and we start seeing all these other groups that pop up, and we're like, oh my God, mind is totally blown right now, because Masonry has like over 1,000 different kind of veins coming off of it, and where they go, and little tributaries, and some of them exclusive, some of them not, some of them invite only, some of them not, some of them not Masonic at all, some of them way crazy spiritual. So it spans everywhere.
Yeah, it's weird. Or some are just dinner clubs.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of the Martinist orders and the Rosicrucian orders, like for instance, the Red Cross of Constantine here in the United States is largely a dinner club. Over in the UK, they do work. So that's another organization that's not, they butt heads a little bit. We're a little more leadership kind of oriented here, and they're a little more, do the work over there. And I'm not sure, I should preface everybody and say, where they do the work, I won't guarantee where, and I won't say where. I'll leave it at that. However, so many different organizations that you could belong to. How do you ever find the time and to dedicate yourself to any one of these? Really, it's pretty interesting to see everything.
Well, isn't there a Martinist order too that goes to the big York Rite convention down in Virginia?
Yeah. So we've got so every year in DC they have Masonic Week, and they really shouldn't call it Masonic Week. What they should call it is Invite Only Week. What's interesting is if you're a member of the Allied Masonic Degrees, that's the AMD for anybody who may have heard that before. It is an invite only group of Masonic orders. And what they do is the AMD is order of Masonry that's predicated on Masonic research, and what they do is they kind of have a twofold mission. Their mission is to promote, they're dedicated to Masonic research, okay? They're also guardian to about 17 different degrees that are not conferred anywhere else. Those degrees being Royal Ark Mariner, Secret Monitor. There's the Brotherhood of David and Jonathan, which is the induction or admission of a prince. Installed Supreme Ruler, Saint Lawrence the Martyr, Grand Tylers of Solomon, Knight of Constantinople, the Architect, Grand Architect, Superintendent, Master of Tyre, Excellent Master, Installed Sovereign Master, Installed Commander Noah, Royal Order of the Red Branch of Eri, and a pendant order including Man-at-Arms, Esquire, and Knight. There's the Scarlet Cord and the Ancient Order of Corks. Some of these are honoraries, like the Royal Order of Red Branch of Eri, and the appendant orders, which is Man-at-Arms and Esquire and Knight. But the AMD has kind of control over this Masonic Week. And the Masonic Week has, I can just kind of read you some of these organizations that they list on their website. For instance, they've got this St. Thomas of Acon, the Great Priory of America, CBCS. So those guys are, the CBCS is, those are your top dogs, aren't they, Frater?
That's a really good question. When it comes to the AMD and the York Rite kind of stuff, I'm not that very well researched on it.
Yeah, so
there's a bunch of people I could call probably right now.
Yeah, they are kind of one of these super invite-only organizations. Then, of course, Allied Masonic Degrees, or the AMD. Then there's the Grand Council Knight Masons, the Holy Royal Arch Knight Templar Priests, Grand Preceptors Tabernacle, Sovereign Order of Knight Preceptors, the Grand College of Rites, the Nine Muses Council, which is an AMD chapter, actually. I mean,
the Grand College of Rites, though, you do not have to be a York Rite member to be a part of. You
correct.
can just be a regular Master Mason, which is pretty rad. They have a great book series. A lot of unique, rare rituals can be found in their books, like, for example, the 99 Degrees of the Rites of Memphis and Misraim that supposedly has been clandestine in the United States, but very, very active in Europe. Has a degree system to 99 degrees and still very active in South and Central America.
Memphis Misraim is pretty fantastic. They basically took the best of the best from Memphis Misraim and created the southern. Well, from what I understand, I'm actually in the middle of reading a great book right now, kind of explaining some of the history of the early high degrees. Some of the other things I've read say that a lot of our Scottish Rite degrees actually probably were the best of the best, or the most complete degrees from the Memphis Misraim system. I don't know exactly how true it is, but again, that's what I recently read.
That's been written about extensively, and it's a really fascinating system that supposedly it comes from. There's two different systems, right? There's the Rite of Memphis, and then there's the Rite of Misraim.
Yeah.
And so the Rite of Misraim comes from Count Cagliostro, right? The famous magician that's been written about extensively, who was a Knight of Malta, and he was one of a high priest of it, and he developed these Hermetic degrees. Supposedly, he said he received them through Templar lineages.
Right.
Granted, this is all just stories that have been passed from ear to ear. How true is that? I don't know, because there's no physical, tangible, historical evidence. Then there's also the Rite of Memphis that kind of showed up in the 1930s. That there's a few people like Lois Blanc, who was a socialist member, and that was a member, and kind of was really popular in France. It still is popular in France to this day, and also as well as Brussels, Belgium. It seems to be kind of the areas, and they tie their lineage back to actually Memphis, Egypt, and the history there. And it's really a serious breakdown, all 99 degrees. Usually it's 90 or 92. The last remaining usually are these 6 or 4 are remain to high grades of individuals who have really proven themselves. Now, how true is it that it's really active today in America? I don't know. I'm not a member, but I've heard rumors that it's a very active order, and it's hidden deep inside of Masonry. It's once you get your 33rd, then another door opens up. Then once this happens, then another door opens up. But again, those are rumors, so I don't know.
I can tell you for certain that there are anybody who is interested, whether you're a Mason or not. Ultimately, it is your decision whether or not you want to join, say, regular Masonry and go through these systems of recognized orders and unrecognized orders and co-Masonry or not co-Masonry, whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. To me and to Frater is, we're interested that you're doing the work, right? But there are Memphis Misraim orders that are searchable searchable on the internet, and they will send you books, and you get a self-initiation. There's all kinds of really interesting orders out there, and several members will consistently do this thing where they will search it, they will buy in, and they'll get their packets and cool, and then their steam kind of dries off, and they don't do the work, and then they kind of call it quits. Which is one of the reasons I think why Freemasonry, or regular Freemasonry, is more active, more prevalent, and people buy more into it, is because, it's actually somewhere to go every week. A lot of these other orders meet quarterly, once a year, or maybe you got to fly down to New Mexico or wherever it is. It's kind of interesting talking about, these Memphis Misraim groups and, the things like that. Let's talk a little bit about, somebody had mentioned, Austin Kenny said he wanted to hear about OTO, Golden Dawn, and Crowley. So we can kind of touch on a little bit of that, but actually Frater O and I were discussing before we started recording that we probably have a good guest for explaining a bit about the OTO more in depth. But the Golden Dawn certainly is very Masonic in nature, very Egyptian-esque at points. Instead of degrees, there are grades. The full name of it is the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn. It was active in Great Britain. It's active here, around the world, really. Very occult, deals in metaphysics, paranormal stuff, it is known as a magical order. Very big on the 20th century Western occultism. So when we say 20th century Western occultism, you could probably narrow that down to like pre-1920s mysticism, dealing with astrology, tarot, what they call geomancy, Kabbalah, astral travel, alchemy, scrying. Scrying is one of these techniques of looking into a candle and keeping your eyes open the whole time until your eyes actually start. There's been schisms in the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn. From what I understand, there's two splits. One side is, we're legit. The other side says we're legit. So, I don't know a whole lot outside of, I know a little bit about their mysticism and their practices, but as far as like, if you were interested in joining, could I tell you which group to join? No. There was, at the beginning of the 20th century, one of the members was Aleister Crowley, and he was pretty active. He did a lot of the work there, got into some of the higher grades, and eventually didn't form the OTO, but reformed the OTO, as I understand it.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting on the founding, if you get into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. To state it for the record, I'm not a member, so you're going to get my opinion from the outside looking in. And, it came down to three founders, Woodsman's Westcott and McGregor's Mathis. And they were all Masons. They were also members of the Society of Rosicruciana and Anglia, SRIA. And they were like really deep into esoterics, and they weren't getting what they wanted inside of Masonry. So they said, hey, let's just go create our own system called Golden Dawn, break down three different orders, and then the first order will teach like esoteric philosophy and like Hermetic Kabbalah and like personal development through the four classical elements of astrology, tarot, divination, and geomancy. The second order would also, or the inner order would create top magic and things like he spoke of, and then the third order would teach more spiritual actions with like communications with like the secret chiefs, is what they referred to. So it's really, really fascinating. The foundations again go back to SRIA, and it's a fascinating order. There's a lot of Masons that are deep into the esoteric that I've come across, and they're really active in Golden Dawn. But most of the time, they won't just come out and tell you that they're members. Right. I think it's an oath. Like they just can't tell you, even if you ask them. They really can't mention it.
If you're a member of the Golden Dawn and we're kind of talking about this, and you say, hey, you didn't get that right, just let us know, because we'd love to know more about it.
I would love to hear what Artemis has to say about this as well.
Yeah, Artemis E. Buchwald.
Because he's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys miss it, Artemis E. Buchwald is a writer for the Midnight Freemasons. He's also worshipful brother. James is a wonderful individual and super super knowledgeable as it comes to occultism, very, very knowledgeable in the themes of archetypes and kind of mystical Christian masonry. He's like almost an adept, I would consider him. And he wrote a great series, actually, on the Midnight Freemasons about the occult lodge. And he goes from, your basic Golden Dawn to the O.T.A to these kind of online orders, the schisms in the Golden Dawn, and all these things. So I would definitely check those out. I'll throw a link up so you can read those. I think there's 8 parts to it. You could probably read the whole thing in an hour. It's really good. Probably less than an hour, actually. Looking at the Wikipedia page for the Golden Dawn, I found it interesting. It says that according to occultist Israel Regardi, the Golden Dawn had spread to the United States of America before 1900, and a Thoth Hermes temple had been founded in Chicago. So now I live in Chicago, right? It's like I want to find this temple and see if it's still there. More than likely, it's probably been torn down. These things don't last out here anymore.
Oh, well, it could still be there, and then you could become a member.
Yeah. You mentioned Paul Foster Case when we were talking about this. He's actually known or alleged to be a member of the Golden Dawn as well. It says was not an original member of the Golden Dawn, but was a member of the successor organization Alpha A Omega, and of course the founder of Builders of the Adytum, or Adytum, B.O.T.A.
A perfect segue too from this is go right into O.T.A. Granted, we're both not members, but Crowley, he decided to create an order that was even deeper than the Golden Dawn. There's some people that we could have on the show that could go really deep into this. Originally, it was modeled after European Masonry and like Masonic Templar organizations.
Right.
They recognized the law of Thelema.
Well, I think the law of Thelema, though, is the iteration completely of Crowley, is it not? Isn't that's his kind of his rewrite of O.T.A?
Honestly, I'm not that well on the O.T.A, and
we'll have to revisit it. Maybe we can get one of our O.T.A resident experts on the show.
That'd be great. We'll definitely circle back with them. I think it'd be really educational for the listeners as well as for the both of us to have something like that on.
Yeah, it would be really cool.
Willing to come on. I mean, a lot of them will not.
Yeah, it is. We definitely should say, anything we're saying here is purely things we've read. When we speculate, we're letting you know we're speculating. But so many of these ideas that we've talked about, like for instance, if you type in Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, just a few of the highlighted words in the articles are SRIA, William Wen Westcott, the O.T.A, occult, metaphysics, paranormal, Wicca, Thelema, Trismegistes, alchemy, Kabbalah, astrology, occult tarot, secret chiefs, Adeptus. You get Edinburgh, Paris, Chicago, Aleister Crowley. You get, of course, United States, B.O.T.A, Alpha, A Omega. You get all of these really, really interesting topics that all just start to tie in to each other. So hopefully you guys kind of get this picture that this occult side of Freemason, this other path, is like this giant spider web that has all of these different organizations all over the place. And they all borrow from some and take from others and claim to be legit, and some say they're more legit or go back farther or have legitimacy of origin, or some of them claim that others are just out for money and this, that, and the other. And you've got leadership organizations and real organizations, and when I say real, I'm talking about teachings, the things that make man better, or the apotheosis of man. But it's really interesting to see how all of these things kind of amalgamate, and it's just bizarre. You don't know where to go, what to do. You can't help but think back at Mother Council of the World Scottish Rite when they wanted to bring order out of chaos.
And all these paths, these different systems and orders and grades, they all lead to the top of the mountain. For like a new Mason that's listening to it, or a new person that's into esoterics, or even a non-Mason, just don't be overwhelmed with all these situations or options you have.
Absolutely.
Then now there's 99 degrees.
Yeah.
It's like degrees are just, they're just silly things, and you should never get hung up on titles or any vanity or anything like that. It's like, as you're taught in the first degree, like simple aspects. Go back to the simple teachings of the 3 degrees, look at the simple working tools that are presented, and apply them to yourself. And then work from there. Focus on the mind, body, and the spirit, and build that. And if you're running into roadblocks there, then consider about going somewhere else. But until you've mastered those 3 virtues, then maybe move forward is my personal advice.
I would totally agree with you, because today, like you said, when I first joined Masonry, I was like, all right, I'm going to join, 1, 2, 3. And then I asked my mentor, I said, Curtis, do I join York Rite or do I join Scottish Rite? And he said, well, I want you to wait a little while, not because you need to serve your lodge or to do this or to do that, but just a soul search, not to understand the dynamics of the lodge. Like, he didn't care. He didn't want me to go in and understand all of the legitimate and illegitimate portions of the work as a Mason in the quote-unquote symbolic or Blue Lodge. He didn't care about. What he cared about was he wanted me to work on me. He wanted me to work on those degrees within me before I searched for additional light. And when I asked him, he said, well, you really enjoy the history and you like a complete story, and, you kind of have this completion issue. And he's right. I had a completion issue. I mean, you're talking to the guy, you're listening to a guy who will, on purpose, not watch the greatest show to ever come on a TV series, right? Because it's still going on. I'm the guy who waits until it's all out on DVD, and then I just binge watch it from start to finish. Can't just stop and wait a week for the next episode or wait for a season. I did that for years when I was a kid watching Star Trek. I got my fill. So I had completion issues, and so with that, of course, I joined the York Rite, because for me, and according to Curtis, it filled in the degrees, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, and 13, and I didn't say 10 because we almost never see that degree done. The super mega awesome master, or whatever the heck it's called these days. And then I joined Scottish Rite, and then I learned that there was a northern and a southern jurisdiction, and it was just, you figure out that there's these 64 degrees in Scottish Rite Masonry, not 32. And then, of course, once, when you think, oh, Scottish Rite has all these degrees, man, most of the degrees aren't even in the Scottish Rite. They're all on this York Rite side of things. You've got the operatives, you've got all those other grades and honorary titles that come from the AMD degrees and everything else. It's wild. But don't get blown away. Don't get frustrated. Don't get confused. As Frater said, just work on yourself with those first, 3 degrees for a while.
So there's a little short story that's helped me along the path, and I found it from a brother. He has a Zen Masonry website, and the title of this is called "The Mysteries of Freemasonry." The new initiate past master of a lodge, the master mason who just had stepped down from his term as worshipful master, sat alone in the dining hall, looked pensive as he stirred his coffee. The lodge's old chaplain noticed this and went to ask him what was on his mind. The past master said, "Brother, I've spent the past 7 years working my way through all the chairs in our lodge as the worshipful master. I did my duties and I may say I executed them extremely well and with honor. I've joined the Scottish Rite, the York Rite, and a few research bodies. And I listened and read everything I could. And I strive to learn the virtue and faith of everything. But after all this time, I don't feel like I know much more than Masonry than I did than after I compelled myself in proficiency as a Master Mason. I feel like I'm missing something. Is this all there is?" The old chaplain asks, "What do you think you're missing?" The past master answered, "I don't know. It's just a feeling I have. It's really a mystery to me." The chaplain responded, "Ah, a mystery. Well, isn't it interesting that our ritual talks about the mysteries of Freemasonry?" "What do you mean?" asked the past master. "Brother," responded the chaplain, "what are the secrets of Freemasonry? We only keep our ritual and our means of recognition secret," said the past master. The chaplain said, "And yet there are many books that reveal these things. So isn't it foolish that we can call them secrets? What is a secret? Really, if it isn't something that you know that you just can't tell someone else, and yet we can tell each other these same so-called secrets all the time, then what might be our real secrets? The past master looked down with a puzzled expression on his face. There, that's it, announced the old chaplain, looking sincerely into the past master's eyes and pointing at his forehead. Pass through that veil and enter the temple, and you'll find the true secrets of the craft. You're not making much sense, replied the old past master. The chaplain smiled and said, isn't that wonderful? It's a beautiful haiku. It's just from a Zen Freemasonry website I found online.
Brilliant piece, man. Really liked it. Thanks for sharing it.
Of course.
But it kind of brings home a little bit of what we need to remember as Masons, that these secrets are indeed inside of us, and we need to unlock them. And we have the keys to do that.
If you purchase some Whence Came You cufflinks or tie bars or pins, this would definitely help your way on the path.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you buy a lapel pin from me, I'll bestow on you the secret password. And the secret password is, I'm adopting this. The secret password, everybody listening to this program, you're going to get the secret password right now. And I've only said it one other time in this show. If you see me in real life, IRL, and you come up to me and you shake my hand and you say, match pin, I'll give you a pin. If you say match pin, I'll give you a pin. That's the only way you can get one. I'm just kidding.
But all honesty, the proceeds definitely come back to help keep the podcast alive. And
it's true, yeah. So we're not all the funds for those pins and things like that. They just go right into a debit account, and folks over at Liberated Syndication, who host all our files, they just pull right from that account. So on occasion, I will use it to upgrade infrastructure to bring the show to you, or if we ran long on an episode and we need to buy more bandwidth for the month, then we got to do that sometimes. But just want to thank everybody. With that, we're going to close it out this week. We had a great conversation with Frater O about the different appendant bodies, the degrees, and different organizations that are out there. And just got to say thanks so much for sparing some time to come on with us once again. I know you are a busy guy, and I just really appreciate you coming on every other week.
Well, thanks again for having me, and it's always a pleasure to come on and be able to chat with a good friend, as well as be able to spread some knowledge to some people.
Absolutely. All right. What a fantastic conversation we had. Wanted to have a general conversation, the kind of conversations that we have after lodge sometimes. Sometimes before lodge, and one of the things that we had thought about talking about actually was what to do when you're an esoteric Mason in a lodge full of not esoteric Masons. It can be frustrating. So we thought we would talk a little bit about those struggles, but upon reflection, we decided we would talk a little bit about the things that were suggested that we talk about during a Facebook post that we had. So we did that, and I hope you guys enjoy. Every once in a while we can take on a little cool project. One of the great projects that we took on, Worshipful Brother Gerald Brown down in Tennessee actually sent me a bunch of really great Manly P. Hall lectures. And the same problem we always have with these lectures is that the audio quality is terrible. So what did we do? Well, I remastered them. So actually, if you go to our website and you click Remastered Manly P. Hall Lectures, you'll see a little intro, and there'll be a picture of Manly P. Hall, and if you click that, it'll take you directly to a Google Drive, and all of the files will be there. So we're talking about the Book of Enoch, the Solar Christ, Zodiac, astrology, planets, the great solar symbolism, the human soul, all kinds of great lectures here for you guys to check out, and they're all free, and we did it just because we wanted to do it, and there was a need for it. And we hope you guys really enjoy those lectures. Also on the website, you'll notice a couple new things. We do have a WCY team now, which consists of myself, Frater O, Brother Adam Thayer, illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison, and Brother Matthew Dobrow, straight out of Connecticut, who's our digital media archivist for now. He also handles our study group stuff he's developing, which is a really exciting program, which we'll release at a little later date. So after all that, let's talk about a famous Freemason. Okay, so this week's famous Freemason, I have said in the past that I try not to cover Masons who are super well known already. Presidents, astronauts, and the things of that nature. However, this week I did want to cover Gus Grissom. Lieutenant Colonel Virgil Ivan Gus Grissom, born 1926, passed away January 27th, 1967. It was one of the original NASA Project Mercury astronauts, a United States Air Force test pilot, and a mechanical engineer. He was the second American to fly in space and the first member of NASA Astronaut Corps to fly in space twice. Grissom was killed along with fellow astronauts Ed White and Roger Chaff during a pre-launch test for the Apollo 1 mission at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, then known as Cape Kennedy, Florida. He was the first of the Mercury 7 to die. He was also the recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross and posthumously the Congressional Space Medal of Honor. Grissom was born in Mitchell, Indiana on April 3, 1926, the second child of Dennis and Cecile. He had a reported IQ of 145, attended public elementary schools, and went to Mitchell High School. He met and befriended Betty LaVon Moore at the school through their extracurricular activities. His Boy Scout troop carried the American flag at school basketball games while she played the drum in the high school band. His first jobs were delivering newspapers for the Indianapolis Star in the morning and the Bedford Times in the evening. He also worked at a local meat market, a service station, and a clothing store. He occasionally spent time at a local airport in Bedford, Indiana, where he first became interested in flying. A local attorney who owned a small plane would take him on flights for $1 each time and taught him the basics of flying an airplane. In World War II, when it broke out, Grissom was still in high school, and he was eager to enlist upon graduation. He enlisted as an aviation cadet in the United States Air Force and completed an entrance exam in November of 1943. He graduated from high school in 1944 and was inducted into the United States Army at Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana on August 8, 1944. He was sent to Shepherd Field in Wichita Falls, Texas for basic flight training, after which he was sent to Brooks Field in San Antonio, Texas, and then in January of 1945 was assigned to Boca Raton Army Airfield in Florida as a clerk. As the war neared its end, Grissom sought to be discharged. He married Betty Moore on July 6, 1945 at the First Baptist Church in Mitchell while on leave. In the Korean War, Grissom re-enlisted in the military after his graduation from Purdue, this time the newly formed United States Air Force. He was accepted into the Air Cadet Basic Training Program at Randolph Air Force Base in Universal City, Texas. Upon completion of the program, he was assigned to Williams Air Force Base in Mesa, Arizona. In March of 1951, Grissom received his pilot wings and commissioned as a second lieutenant. Grissom's wife remained in Indiana while he was away. His first child, Scott, was born. After his birth, they joined Grissom at his base in Arizona. The family remained there only briefly, and in December of 1951, they moved to Presque Isle, Maine, where Grissom was assigned to Presque Isle Air Force Base and became a member of the 75th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. In 1958, Grissom received an official teletype message instructing him to report to Addison, to an address in Washington, D.C., wearing civilian clothes. The message was classified top secret, and Grissom was not to discuss the contents with anyone. He was one of 110 military test pilots whose credentials had earned them an invitation to learn more about the space program in general and Project Mercury in particular. Grissom liked the sound of the program, but knew that competition for the final spots would be fierce. Grissom was sent to the Lovelace Clinic at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to receive extensive physical examinations and to submit to a battery of psychological tests. He was nearly disqualified when doctors discovered that he suffered from hay fever, was permitted to continue on when it was determined that his allergies would not be a problem due to the absence of ragweed pollen in space. On April 13, 1959, Grissom received official notification that he had been selected as one of the 7 Project Mercury astronauts. On July 21, 1961, Grissom was pilot of the second Project Mercury flight, Mercury Redstone No. 4, which he named Liberty Bell 7. This was a suborbital flight that lasted 15 minutes and 37 seconds. After splashdown, emergency explosive bolts unexpectedly fired and blew the hatch off, causing water to flood the spacecraft. Quickly exiting through the open hatch and into the ocean, Grissom was nearly drowned as water began filling his spacesuit. A recovery helicopter tried to lift and recover the spacecraft, but the flooding spacecraft became too heavy and was cut loose before sinking. That spacecraft was recovered in 1999, but no further evidence was found which could conclusively explain how those explosive hatches released before they were supposed to. After the incident, Grissom was surrounded by reporters in a news conference after his space flight in the American second manned ship. When asked how he felt, he replied, "Well, I was scared a good portion of the time. I guess that's a pretty good indication." Project Gemini. In early of 1964, Alan Shepard was grounded after being diagnosed with Meniere's disease, and Grissom was designated as command pilot for Gemini 3, the first manned Project Gemini flight, which flew on March 23, 1965. The mission made up his first NASA astronaut to fly into space twice. This flight made 3 revolutions of the Earth and lasted for 4 hours, 52 minutes, and 31 seconds. Grissom was one of the 8 pilots of the NASA paraglider research vehicle. Grissom was one of the smaller astronauts, and he worked very closely with engineers and technicians from McDonnell Aircraft who built the Gemini spacecraft. The first 3 spacecraft were built around him, and the design was humorously referred to as the Gusmobile. However, by July of 1963, NASA discovered 14 of the 16 astronauts could not fit themselves into the cabin, and later, cockpits were remodeled. During this time, Grissom invented the multi-axis translation thruster control used to push Gemini and Apollo spacecrafts in linear directions for rendezvous and docking. During the Apollo program, Grissom was a backup command pilot for the Gemini 6A when he shifted to the Apollo program and was assigned as command pilot for the first manned mission, AS-204, with senior pilot Ed White, who had flown in space on Gemini 4 mission when he became the first American to make a spacewalk, and pilot Roger B. Chaffee. The 3 men were granted permission to re-enter their flight as Apollo 1 on their mission insignia patch. Before its planned flight on February 21st, 1967 launch, the command module interior caught fire and burned on January 27, 1967 during a pre-launch test on Launch Pad 34 at Cape Kennedy, killing all 3 men. The fire's ignition source was never determined, but the deaths were attributed to a wide range of lethal hazards in the early Apollo command module design and conditions of the test, including pressurized 100% oxygen pre-launch atmosphere, many wiring and plumbing flaws, flammable materials used in the cockpit and the astronauts' flight suits, and an inward opening hatch which could not be opened quickly in an emergency and could not be opened at all with full internal pressure. After the tragedy, NASA adopted a new flight numbering system for Apollo and honored the crew by making Apollo 1 official. The spacecraft problems were corrected, and the Apollo program carried on successfully to reach the objective of landing men on the moon. Again, if it was unclear, these 3 brave astronauts were in a pre-flight test when something caught fire in the module where they were, and they couldn't escape with this 100% pressurized oxygen atmosphere inside, and all 3 men were killed. Grissom was a member of Mitchell Lodge number 228 in Mitchell, Indiana. That's it for this week. Please follow the show on Facebook and follow on Twitter at Whence. Don't forget about the Midnight Freemasons, publishing 3 great articles every single week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Right now we got a great series going on Mondays with Brother Todd E. Creason. I should say illustrious Brother Todd E. Creason. He's got a great series going on. Please check that out. In addition to that, please don't forget about the Masonic Roundtable, going live every Tuesday at 10/9 Central. Except last Tuesday. We didn't have enough to form a quorum for the show, so we had to postpone. Coming up on Tuesday. Please don't forget to visit our sponsors, www.brothersblendcoffee.com. Check out our show links to Onnit, to freemasonryart.com, and don't forget to check out a pin. Maybe purchase a pin to help out this program. Again, thank you so much for all of our people who donate. I say people because we have brothers and fellows, and we have profane, and we have ladies. We have all kinds, listening to the show and supporting. So thank you so much to everybody for that. And with that, I will talk to you guys all next week. Until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.